opportunity for allowing me to speak and to share some of our experiences here in the city of Knoxville with a road diet. And I know you all have expressed some concern about pushback and dealing with opposition. I hope some of the things that we've learned in our efforts will maybe give you some ideas and some suggestions that might be helpful to you. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump right in. All right. So first and foremost, just want to make sure everybody is clear on what a road diet is, or right sizing a street. This image came from the planning study that we conducted called A History of Connection Cumberland Avenue Corridor Plan, and that was actually adopted both by our City Council and our Metropolitan Planning Commission. We'll talk about that more in just a few minutes, but basically Cumberland Avenue was a 4-lane street, and we had significant issues with side impact crashes, rear end crashes, significant turn volumes. There were 36 curb cuts in a 6-block area, and then several streets that did not align, creating more left turn movements throughout that corridor. So as you can see on the image here, basically turning left put you in a situation where you might be able to see the car in front of you, but you might not be able to see the car coming in the outside lane. So obviously there was a lot of conflict happening along this corridor, and we had heard for literally decades. Actually, this effort started. Some can trace it back to the 1980s when people decided that the street really wasn't functioning well and it needed to be improved. So with that, our office, the Office of Redevelopment, we work from these goals, basically a vision of working from disinvestment to investment in the core of the city, making sure that we're putting emphasis on mixed use, developing from a strong core outward, and then strategic investment in public infrastructure, and careful use of tools to foster quality private development, such as tax increment financing and payment in lieu of taxes. Having that vision for our office really helped us as we were taking this project on to then apply these principles, one of them being continuity across administrations. The Cumberland Avenue Corridor project actually started under then Mayor Haslam, who ultimately left to become governor for a little while of the state. And then Mayor Rogero, who is the current mayor, saw the value in both what the public process had been and also the value of the project overall because of the goals. And so they did choose to continue to move this project through even across a variety of administrations. We really want to try and focus on organic growth and sound urban design and market-driven development, as opposed to sort of creating a false market. We also find the benefits of economic growth, preservation of historic structures, and community building some of our key efforts. So with all of that, we make it a point to work from the process of working from conflict to collaboration in public decisions, making sure that we have intensive public input and discussion through public meetings and forums, and then transparent dissemination of information through a variety of mediums. And just to orient folks, if you're familiar at all with the city of Knoxville, the Tennessee River runs through next to our downtown, and you can see that the Cumberland Avenue area is off to the west of downtown, and is really adjacent to the University of Tennessee as well. So one of the key things in talking about sort of addressing some conflicts that you might find, really and truly what was most valuable for us was that there was a very intensive planning charrette and an adoption of a plan that set the goal for the Cumberland Avenue Corridor project. And that was something that everyone bought into, and that goal was to chart the course for a more attractive, economically successful, vibrant, and safe Cumberland Avenue. So really setting a goal that everyone can get behind and agree that that is the appropriate focus was critical to us being able to move beyond points where we did find conflict, because oftentimes reasonable people can disagree on how to achieve a goal, but if they both have the same goal in mind, they can often respect decisions that get made, even if they don't necessarily agree with how to get there. With that said, one of the key things for this project as well was looking at the potential investment and making sure that we were leveraging our public dollars. So as I mentioned, our goal from our department is to make sure that we're moving from conflict to collaboration. And so we went through a very intensive public meeting process. We actually had a stakeholder advisory board with more than 35 members, and we hosted more than 24 meetings with them. We had 12 public meetings over the course of the development of this project from after the adoption of the vision plan, so from 2008 through the start of construction in 2015. We did direct mailings to affected property owners and adjacent areas, including the Fort Sanders neighborhood, which includes one of the most densely populated neighborhoods in the state of Tennessee that includes somewhere around 15,000 people during the school year in a 50-block area. We also had one-on-one individual meetings with property owners and business owners to make sure that they understood what was being proposed and get their input and make adjustments where we could, if that made sense to do so. We also did something for the first time for the city of Knoxville, which is not uncommon now, but at the start of the project in 2009, it was really sort of uncharted territory for the city. We actually started a blog and made regular posts, and that blog is still active if anybody wants to go and visit it online. It's cumberlandconnections.blogspot.com. And then, of course, we had staff and consulting engineers, and we met on a monthly basis over 5 years to pin down the details for this project. Here you can see Cumberland Avenue in all of its glory in 2008, and on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see a number of issues that we felt like were critically important to address. Obviously, unsafe pedestrian crossings, the overhead utility lines, signs that were really oriented towards a major highway at the end of the corridor as opposed to the pedestrians, no buffer for the pedestrians, having unrestrained delivery parking where they would park on the sidewalks because there was nowhere for them to go in order to service the businesses, and then left turn movements that were really pretty much a free-for-all. And here's what it looks like 10 years later. I will say something to consider as you look at doing these projects is to have patient persistence. These things don't happen quickly. They don't happen overnight. And that's okay as long as you're moving towards your goals. With that said, we did look at making sure we were sharing visions that the community could understand and get behind, in this idea of having a buffered pedestrian experience. This is what it looks like today. A gentleman out walking his dog, and Pace Bike Share on the corridor there. So it really did meet the goal of increasing safety for pedestrians. We started construction in 2015 with phase 1, which was the west end of the corridor that connected to Alcoa Highway, that major arterial or major highway at the end of the street. Obviously, as we did this, we took the opportunity to go ahead and address underground utilities and put in new turn lanes, traffic signals, and a new railroad crossing. Let me tell you, folks, in terms of dealing with conflicts, there is no one quite like railroads to deal with when you're trying to bring a public project into place. And we got to deal with 2. There's the at-grade crossing you see in this slide, and then just a half a block west of that location, there's an above-grade crossing. It was quite a learning experience. With that said, we had a second phase, and we went ahead and rebuilt the sidewalks on either side. We took away the lane of traffic, added that lane of traffic to the sidewalks in order to widen them and create that buffering space. We also installed landscape and medians, and I apologize, we'll talk about that more in just a moment. But one of the key things here was we made it a point to communicate with the public and also with the businesses, and as much as possible mitigate the negative impacts of construction for the businesses and the residents in the area. And we did that with things like having promotions through our project. We did the Battle at Cumberland. It was an online scavenger hunt The merchants donated prizes, the thought being that, you know, if you could get people to come down and participate in the scavenger hunt and then give them prizes to come back to the businesses, they're going to visit more than once. We even had our mayor, Mayor O'Hara's in that bottom right-hand picture, participate in an event called Brick by Brick pregame on the strip. We actually closed down a portion of the road and let it be open for a block party, and people came out, had a great time one very hot September Saturday afternoon in conjunction with an out-of-town football game. And then, of course, we made it a point to post regular information to an app, Facebook, Twitter, and also a website specifically devoted to the project. Here are some of the details, and as I mentioned, we did landscaping, and so part of the benefit to this project and rebuilding those sidewalks, we were able to install silva cells underneath the sidewalks so that the tree roots can grow into that space underneath the sidewalk, and that it won't heave the sidewalk long term. So we were able to help folks understand you know, the long-term benefit of adding landscape was, number one, it would provide shade, reduce heat island effect, capture more storm water, clean that storm water, and also create that buffer for the pedestrian from the vehicle passing. And that really has been very well received by the community. We also took the opportunity to install benches and new transit shelters and to provide wayfinding. We made sure that we were doing at-grade, doing opportunities for buffering the pedestrian as they were crossing the street. Where we didn't have a signalized intersection, we were able to split the median and allow pedestrians to cross one lane at a time and be able to wait in a safe space to finish crossing. We also used stamped asphalt crosswalks to mark those crossings, again, to really go towards the goal of improving safety. And Ellen, you might be able to help with some of this information, but we had statistics showing for several years prior to the start of construction that 7 or 8 people were getting hit as either a pedestrian or cyclist on this roadway every year. And in the full year after completion of construction, that number went to 0 reported bike or pedestrian crashes. So that was pretty significant for us and meeting our goal of improved safety. We also saw between 23 and 40% reduction in vehicle crashes with the new road diet. And this is kind of a look towards downtown, eyeing that whole overview of the corridor. And then again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we wanted to make sure that this project was leveraging our public investment. Our total investment for the project was $25 million. Of that, the city's portion was $4 million. We set the stage with a new zoning code and with the public infrastructure investments, especially with regards to the utilities, to see a vacant and blighted hotel be renovated and reopened as the Hilton Garden Inn with a $17 million investment. That opened in 2013, actually prior to the start of construction on the street. The same for the Evolve building that you see here in the bottom right-hand corner, a 6-story mixed-use development, opened in fall of 2014. And then the same thing with the University Commons project. This was a 10-acre brownfield site that had sat vacant for a decade, just on the west end of the corridor. First urban vertical retail in the city of Knoxville, providing more than 240,000 square feet of retail space and covered parking with a $65 million investment. They were confident in making that investment because of the investment that we were making in the public infrastructure and the renovation to the street that we were making. Subsequently, we've had the Standard, an apartment complex on 17th Street open with $39 million of investment. And then finally, the 1830 Cumberland Avenue project, or the 10 apartment complex mixed-use redevelopment, 9,500 square feet of new retail right on the corridor at 19th Street, and about 140 apartment units with 600 beds for student housing. And they did open last August and are filling their retail space right now. So overall, these projects represent $190 million worth of private investment that was leveraged from the public investment of $25 million. And that conversation alone, in addition to the safety improvements, has made a huge difference in the tenor of the public conversations that we've had about the project. And then finally, just one last reminder of what it was before, and the reason that you see traffic shifted in this image is because the water line broke regularly on Cumberland Avenue, and they would have to shift traffic to go in and do temporary repairs. And then, of course, after, we've got all new public infrastructure for the underground utilities. There's shorter crossing distances for pedestrians. They're better highlighted. It's an opportunity for economic investment, and we're certainly seeing that throughout the length of this corridor. And it's just been a really great pleasure to work on this project and go from the original vision plan and the goals that were established and work towards meeting those goals and be able to say to the public with confidence that we have met those goals. And really and truly, that seems to have been a great way to help deal with those who came out in opposition, just reminding them what was important to the community: safety, economic investment, vitality, vibrancy, and being able to show after the completion of the project that we have met those goals. So thanks so much for your time. I'm happy to answer questions whenever that's appropriate, and I'll go ahead and stop my sharing of the slides so that Louise can get